I need it. So that's
How are we today? We want to be well. And we are about to find out whether we can make ourselves well. We will be starting very, very shortly. We are waiting for, we just call people to come in so that we can start. May I ask the provincial leaders to ensure that their delegation are in, so that when we start, we don't have a great number of people streaming in. Can we give them 3 minutes to make sure that we are all settled, colleagues, and then we can start? Thank you. Amandla. Amandla. Colleagues, comrades, we are starting now. Many were saying yesterday that it has been a very tedious journey to arrive here today. We are confident that we have consulted constituencies where we come from, that their needs and interest shines the uppermost in our minds as we engage over the next 2 to 3 days. We also want to believe that it is inherently about them, about the country, and our responsibility is the leadership that has been entrusted upon us to navigate some of these key challenges that we are facing. We are also mindful that while the country has challenges, the sector indeed has its own challenges. Let us use these 3 days to learn from each other, to build trust, and to ensure that we are ready to the task. That's what the leadership is about. Less about itself and more about the people. And more so about the country, because it is those people who need an effective government to assist them during these difficult times. If we can focus our strategic attention to that purpose, and that everything flows in that context. I also want to believe that we all have received the program. We started by ensuring that the streaming is on, and I want to believe, colleagues, that the streaming is on. We are expecting 200 delegates sitting here, and some are still streaming in because of some of the logistics traveling from various provinces. Remember, the delegates who are here are not just chosen from the provincial centers. They are from all the districts that exist in each province. Therefore, our being here is grounded on that responsibility. So those are the 200 delegates. My name is Buichoko Ditlhake from Kagiso Trust. I will be co-directing the program with Anzio. I don't know where is Anzio from the Social Justice Assembly. And I think during the course of the day, we will also alternate and will announce the directors of the program as we go along. And Anzio is here. I just want to quickly start by allowing Anzio to give us a quick layout because we have 150 delegates planned for the provincial satellite who are physically convening but connecting with us via the link, so that we know that we are not only ourselves here, there are those who are convening in about 4 or 5 provinces. Anzio.
Good morning, comrades. My name is Anzio Jacobs. I'm the Deputy Chairperson of the Social Justice Assembly. It is incredible that we have managed to get into this room. Even more so incredible that we have managed to organize 5 provincial sittings with many of your assistants. in a very short space of time, but they have happened nonetheless. So we are currently having provincial sittings in the Eastern Cape in East London, in the Northern Cape in Kimberley, in the Western Cape in Cape Town itself, in the Free State in Bloemfontein, as well as in Limpopo in Sekhukhune district. So those are all happening lifetime. They will be parallel to this program. I think that it's important to speak a little bit about the methodology. We thought that because we could only get 200 people into this room, that it would be important to try and get as many people to join the conversation from their own locations. The intention here is that while we are having discussions that are impactful at a national level here, our issues are still provincial issues in large and district issues. And so that we hope these provincial convenings will be a platform in which those discussions can take place meaningfully. Beyond that, we also recognize that we couldn't get more than the 350 delegates that would be total, 200 here and 150 in the provincial convenings. And so we thought that it would be good for us to make use of the relationships with community radio stations, which are so important in our landscape. For that reason, we are partnered with 5 community radio stations at present. That number is growing. Presently, we are being broadcast amongst the following: Drikop FM in Limpopo, Dansane FM in the Eastern Cape, Bush Radio in the Western Cape, as well as Eden Radio in the Western Cape, Alex FM in Gauteng, as well as Ratlu FM in the Northern Cape. So the idea is that we spread amongst those radio stations. They have a reach of over 150,000 amongst them. And so we really hope that the information that is being shared in this session will be shared widely. For those of you that are unaware, we are streaming live from this room. There are individual links available should you need to get hold of that link to speak back to your constituency. Please do reach out to one of the organizing team. I'm sure you'll find a lot of us, or ask the desk at the back where they can provide you with the link. The intention is that people can interact with us lifetime on Facebook with the live stream. That means that individuals that are not part of the provincial convening or here in the room are able to speak to us anyway via that platform. We'll be reading the information lifetime. In the provincial convenings, each of the sessions have been planned to include reports from the provincial convenings. So while there are breakaway sessions here, they will simultaneously happen in the provincial convenings. We will collate those reports lifetime again and report back in this space. And then finally, community radio will be making sure that we are translated across the country into our local languages. And this is the format and the methodology that we're using for this program. Thank you, comrades.
Thank you very much, and with the intention to preserve time, that we focus on the business of us being here. I want to start by asking Reverend Zone Vutalu to come on stage while I will introduce him. I also want to acknowledge the Chief Executive Officer of Kagiso Trust, Memang Kodi Muite. She's sitting very quietly there. And I'm doing so because it is their commitment as well to support civil society so that we re-navigate our role. Reverend Zo is a trustee of Kagiso Trust and the head of the programs committee. And I don't have to introduce him more than that. He has been part of our journey from difficult times to today. And I know his commitment is to see through that some of the commitment that we have made and the happiness of 1994, we find the way of achieving them while all of us are still here to celebrate. Thank you very much, Reverend Zo.
Awushini nda sanibonani molo minjani. Let me you don't respond. I'm greeting you, you don't respond. Awushini Urini Sanbonani. Molo. Yeah, I'm too tall. All protocol observed. I am honored as the chairperson of the Kagiso Trust Programs Committee and trustee to share with you some brief opening remarks and reflections at the start of what we believe will be an important and momentous event and process. I can say without any fear of contradiction that I'm possibly the longest serving trustee currently. Yes, I have stayed the course. Kagiso Trust mission is of a peaceful and prosperous South Africa in which justice and respect for human rights is upheld and realized. We, as Kagiso Trust, are a direct product of our nation's history when that vision, the one now enshrined in our Constitution, was under threat. And some of you may remember that Kagiso Trust was strategically located then as part of civil society. You remember the government was the illegitimate government. So it was set up and mobilized as part of civil society. And Kagiso Trust has continued to look at civil society as the lever of bringing about change and realizing the mission of the trust itself. Our experience of the last 30 years of our democracy has once again led me to welcome to this pivotal moment of our nation's history, a moment that calls for unwavering unity, collective action, and a shared commitment to address the pressing crises facing South Africa. As we gather today at this Civil Society Summit, convened by us as Kagiso Trust, it's called #Unmuted, Civil Society by Kagiso Trust, #Unmuted, Civil Society Coalition, and Social Justice Assembly, with shared concern for our country's future, we acknowledge the gravity of the challenges that confront us. Our nation stands at a crossroads, grappling with a convergence of challenges that threatens the very foundation of our constitutional democracy. From systemic corruption to widening socio-economic inequalities, inadequate service delivery, governance failures, the urgency of the situation demands our immediate action. The gravity of these challenges cannot be overstated, but neither can the resilience and determination of the South African people. Today, we convene not just as individuals or representatives of various organizations, but as a collective force driven by a common purpose to forge a path towards a brighter, more equitable future for all of us and also for future generations. The summit serves as a beacon of hope, a platform for dialogue, collaboration, and concrete action. It is a testament to our belief in the power of civil society to effect meaningful change and to hold accountable those entrusted with the responsibility of governance. We are here to voice our collective determination to demand transparency, accountability, and ethical leadership in governments, to advocate for policies that uplift marginalized communities and bridge the socio-economic divide, to ensure effective service delivery across sectors, meeting the needs of South African citizens, to promote inclusive dialogue and active citizen participation in decision-making processes, to activate citizen participation and responsibility as we approach national and provincial elections in 2024, and ensure our constitutional responsibility towards good, effective, and accountable governance for the people of our land. Our resolve is firm, our commitment unyielding. We extend our hand to all stakeholders, government, private sector, communities, to join forces in concerted effort to overcome these challenges. As we embark on this current summit, let us harness the strength of our diversity, the power of unity, and the spirit of resilience that defines us as South Africans. Let us chart a course of action that will not only address the crises of the present, but also lay the groundwork for a more just, equitable, and prosperous future for generations to come. Together, let us be the architect of change, the champions of progress, and the custodians of a better tomorrow, the South African we want. And as I conclude, just bear in mind that as Kagiso Trust, we have firmly identified you, civil society, as levers of that change. I thank you.
Thank you, Reverend Zo. I also want to acknowledge all of us here that our presence is a demonstration of that determination. But I also want to acknowledge that among us, there are Amakosi who also want to appreciate how South Africans can be able to enjoy the betterness, the goodness of our country. We know that we have two Amakosi from KZN, but I also know that we have had so many Amakosi during the provincial consultation. One of the ethos that we have asserted is that we need to reach out to all South Africans, and most importantly, even to reach out to our parents, because most of the challenges that we are facing requires our collective resources, our traditional leaders, our parents, the families, in short, the totality of South Africans who came together during the difficult times that Reverend Zo alluded to. We cannot do it alone, but all as a collective, we can make a difference. While I'm outlining the program very briefly, I think we can begin to load the next presentation. I hope the colleagues from the IT have it. Today, we are focusing on building the common issues. The whole day today, we are investing in identifying the key national burning points. And these burning points, if we believe that they are so fundamental, and when addressed, they will assist ourselves and our nation to begin to detour from the present trajectory to a better light. Those must be the key issues that which will assist us to assist our country to move forward to the aspirations and promises of 1994. Those should lead us to then also determining how do we engage with the government through the social compacting. In other words, they should assist us in crafting what we'll call a civil society compact or social contract with the rulers of the country as a determination to take collective responsibility, not only for the present challenges, but for the future. And I think that is intended to be engaged with the government after this summit, to say our contributions are premised on our collective appreciation of addressing these key fundamental issues. That is for today, and we'll get a presentation from NEDLAC. Remember, largely social compacting in South Africa is normally should be cooked from NEDLAC. And then we'll have a discussions and appreciation of the emerging issues, and we'll go into breakaway rooms and we'll explain them when we get there. We will conclude the day also by agreeing on the minimum plan of action and how we move forward in realizing the key burning issues that are addressed, but a minimum plan of action for us to drive for their realization. Tomorrow we are focusing on the elections. Not only that the country is going to the national and provincial elections next year, but significantly we need to take stock of how electoral politics have assisted or not assisted the country. What do we think needs to happen? Because the lessons of the last 30 years requires an agency from citizens to find a way in which things can work. Not only electoral reforms that have been discussed from provinces to date, but also how do we ensure that there is a deeper accountability as we cast our votes. But we also know that there are missing almost 28 million South African citizens who are supposed to exercise that constitutional right to contribute towards the strengthening of our democracy. Out of that 28 million, 14 million do not bother to vote, to register. And 14 million do register, but they do not turn up during the D-Day. We need to explore that, and we'll discuss the details as we get there. At the end of day 2, we should be having concrete plan of action. And as I said, all these commitments that we are going to make, we have always must bear in mind that there are communities and real people back home that on their name and behalf, we are here. How do we bring them into this journey? We have also want to emerge from that meeting with what we call civil society electoral platform or manifesto. Civil society does not contest elections, but it needs to have a clarity of how do we strengthen our democracy through the electoral processes, and how do we hold politicians accountable right to the National Assembly. But how do we assist in ensuring that the voter education in this country produces very good and informed electorates. And that platform will drive us beyond the elections. How do we ensure accountability and strengthen democracy? In a sense, that is a layout of the conference program, wherein the third day is a half day. And we'll be bringing together what has emerged over the 2 days, making sure that the resolutions represent us and we agree with them, including a concrete plan of action and a pledge among ourselves that we will truthfully take forward what emerged out of this conference. Remember, this is a collaborative convening, and collectively we must agree how we hold ourselves accountable going forward. I think colleagues and comrades have the program with them, and we'll keep on updating it as we go along. At this point in time, I think we are clearer about why we are here in this conference. We have said our country is facing many challenges. There are so many and increasing by day. But we have to find pieces of addressing this challenge, because we are not going to resolve all of them. Let us be realistic. These challenges ranges from education system, corruption, collapsing municipalities, increasing inequalities, hunger, gender-based violence, and many others, not to mention the economy and the electricity crisis. Among so many challenges which are increasing day by day, we have to identify those which can be the triggers of change. Let us take that responsibility. But we have also said in this conference, let us become the co-creators of the new ways in which civil society can contribute and make a difference. We know that we are part of society, and in many ways, we are also affected by some of the ills, because these ills sometimes are also prevalent amongst our ranks. In this process, we are also building what we call a principled partnership, so that we should be able to speak truth to ourselves, for us to address the national question. If we don't do that, we'll be betraying the nation, as politicians have done. We must equally cleanse ourselves of some of these illnesses for us to become the true champions of change and transformation. That is the essence of this conference. It's not starting today. I know that the hashtag Unmute met last year, and I know that we have had 12 provincial consultative meetings in preparation of this meeting. I know that the Social Justice Assembly has met, and they have their assembly. From their conference last year, they met also this year to fine-tune the key issues. I know that the organizations involved with the electoral processes have undertaken and attempted to clarify what it would mean to have a civil society platform on elections and what are the responsibilities. None of these commitments are by no means an easy feat. It requires people with commitment and the determination, but also fearlessness. For the challenges ahead, and especially in the period of elections, is filled with thorniest roads. I believe we are here because we have made a determination as individuals and organizations that we are prepared to confront these challenges head on. And that should be our unique and most significant focus. We'll have many other platforms to deal with other issues. Because if you don't do that, our country will remain in ashes. If we don't act decisively, urgently, and quicker. All the issues we are going to discuss are framed within this particular context. At this point in time, I want to call Lisa Shiftel, who's the Executive Director of NEDLAC. We all know what is NEDLAC, isn't it? Comrades, we need to go back to the basic schools. We will arrange that. It was one of the most profound innovations post in 1994 to bring social partners together to navigate dialogue, labor, business, and civil society, including government. And I think we have lessons to draw in order to renew our commitment to that noble idea. But I don't have to introduce her because most of us and you knows her very well. She's a comrade, an activist of the refined perspective. Lisa, the stage is yours. I thought the presentation will be flighted.
It is flattered, but I can't see it.
Oh, it's too far. You can stand
No,
there.
let me bring my laptop, then I'll just... Good morning, everybody, and thank you very much. I hope you can all hear me. This is a bit of a logistical business here. Thank you very much, Kagiso Trust, for inviting me here. Right at the end of the year, just when I thought things were quieting down, AB, as I know him, he calls me and he says, "Can you come next week to make a presentation?" Then he tells me what the presentation is about, and it's a difficult one, but it's an important one. And what I'm going to share with you, are the lessons, I think, about social compacting at NEDLAC and how you can apply those lessons for the work that you're doing in civil society. Now, I can't see anybody now with this thing, but let me see. Okay. So I can see what I've been asked to do here is this multitasking that now comes with this online working. So I must press different buttons at different times. And it reminds me of your slogan, to unmute. And that is quite hard sometimes to unmute technology. But in any event, so I'm going to talk a little bit about understanding social compacting and why social compacting. Then, as I said, I'm going to share the experience of NEDLAC. And then I'm going to raise some things for you as civil society to consider. This is the hard part for me, the easy part for you because you're just listening. But after this, I can see you're not going to have any rest because you have to go to commissions and so on and so on. So these are some considerations for you in your commission deliberations. So then to go to the first section, and to start off with something serious but important. I think in this day and age, when we see what is going on in Gaza, in Palestine, in Darfur, in our own country, I think we are facing not only a polycrisis, and in the little box I've said what the Prime Minister of Barbados sees as a polycrisis, where you hit from one crisis to another. But we're facing a chronic polycrisis, like we have chronic illnesses, that it's quite ongoing. Politically, as I think's been alluded to, we have declining trust and legitimacy of government. Economically, high unemployment and low growth, which has gone on for a long time. Health and education outcomes are poor. High levels of crime and low conviction rates. And an issue which I'm sure many of you are concerned about, the morality of our people. High levels of corruption, poor family cohesion. And on top of that, we have disasters. Whether it's due to climate change, like the flooding in KZN, or whether it's due to aging infrastructure, like what happened in Bree Street and Albert Street in Johannesburg. So if we've got a chronic polycrisis, it means we need a chronic or an ongoing polyresponse. And while it is government's role to lead and to govern, and the role of civil society to contribute to better government, the reality that we've all come to face, and that's why you're having this extraordinary summit, is that we have to, as civil society, be involved, even play more leadership roles, and we have to be involved for the long haul. And this is where social compacting can come in. It's a way of collaborating with government, where you minimize the risks of collusion and co-option, which is always a risk, but it can be managed, and the independence and power of civil society can be maintained. But it requires, in the language of activism, strategy and tactics. So, how do we define a social compact? So it's an agreement with societal role players. It's where there has to be dialogue and where there has to be some kind of collective bargaining, although I'm going to come back to that some more. But it's a process and it's a framework. You all in the NGOs, you know about frameworks, you know, outputs and outcomes and so on. So it's a framework. But we start from the perspective that it is working together, collaborating, co-creating, coordinating network, and building trust can lead to more effective outcomes than working separately. It doesn't say that there shouldn't still be protests. There shouldn't necessarily be violent. There shouldn't still be lobbying. But that you will also need the other side, which is working together in particular ways. It's also about unity in diversity, where common interests are maximized in a principled way, and it's about not denying that they're different or conflicting interests. Now, there's a lot of different kinds of social compacts, and I've looked here at 4 different kind of categories with some examples. The first is scope. And a social compact can be national, so that the economic recovery and reconstruction plan, it's national. It's with big national players. But it can also be sectoral. In the DTIC, with the sugar unions and with the sugar companies, there's a sugar master plan. And then it can also be local. So again, from the NEDLAC experience, or from the experience of organized labor and business, about, I think, 18 months ago now, there was a canning factory in Ashton in the Western Cape that was going to close. And there was an agreement reached between the local authority, the municipality of Ashton, and the business and the workers, that the workers won't take a salary increase, but their jobs will continue, and then we'll see if Tiger, I think it's Tiger Brands, will be able to continue. So that's a local social compact. Again, and I'm going to come back to this a lot, usually when people have thought historically about social compact, it's seen as a trade-off, you know, that, and so in Ireland and Australia, when Labour governments came into power, they said to the unions, restrain your wages and we can create more jobs. And because wages were restrained, business could say, we're prepared to invest. That's where this thing comes from. But it hasn't worked in South Africa. So I think there's another kind of social compact, which I'm calling, or we call programmatic. So for example, in 2018, there was a presidential job summit. Everybody agreed we need to look at ways to retain and create jobs. And everybody said, business, labor, community, they said, this is what we can do. And they put it in a framework agreement. So it wasn't a trade-off that you must reduce wages to create jobs, but labor, maybe you can create jobs in this way, business in this way, through localization, and we can all agree that we must work together in a programmatic way. Then there's another thing. Sometimes you can sign with a big signing ceremony, and it's good photo opportunity. We did that when we signed the social compact to support Eskom. And it binds the leaders because they feel now they've signed, they must be held accountable. But it can also happen dynamically and naturally. Thanks for the singing break. I understand we are back online. Apologies to those of you online. So I was saying that sometimes we have a signed agreement, sometimes it's more dynamic. So now that we finished with the COVID pandemic, many of us will say that how we cooperated during the COVID was as if we were in a social compact. We all agreed there was a crisis, and we agreed programmatically what we needed to do collaboratively to address it. And then the last issue is about who the partners are. So again, traditionally, social compacts are seen as tripartite, and in the mining industry there are social plans where it's business, labor, and government or local government. But you can also have multi-party. For example, in the Western Cape, there's a food forum, which has got lots of different government departments, NGOs, trade unions, all collaborating to achieve household food security. And then I'll talk a bit later on about the bilateral business and government partnership. So now I'm going to talk about NEDLAC's experience of social compacting, and I'm going to talk a little bit about these social compacts that you see on the picture here, and I will look at the achievements and lessons, and I will also talk about the social compact that the President promised in February 2022. So the first one I want to talk about is the Presidential Job Summit. I'm not going to go through all the list on the left-hand side. I'm sure you'll also get the presentation, but it gives you an idea of the range of issues where there was an attempt to get agreement and progress on. Altogether, there were 77 different commitments, which is a lot. And there was a job target. The job target wasn't met, but in the process, the constraints, why we're not creating jobs, were identified and worked on. At that time, water use licenses was a big issue, and visas. Visas for skilled people, e-visas for tourists to easily come to South Africa. It also engendered a process where everybody felt part of the process of retaining and creating jobs and holding government to account. And at some point, the President came to NEDLAC once a month, and the President would say to the Minister of Health, why are you not creating enough jobs in the cannabis value chain? And that unblocking, for me, laid the foundation for work in government. So instead of the social partners saying to the Department of Health, why aren't you moving on the cannabis master plan? Now there's Operation Vulindlela that is saying to the Department of Mineral and Energy, why are you not moving on the mining cadastral system, or things like that, which I think is more appropriate. The Presidential Job Summit, when COVID came, there were so many more job losses that we then integrated it into what the President asked for was an economic recovery and reconstruction plan. And again, I'm not going to go through the issues which are not that clear, but again, the key issues, the enablers, the things that would create jobs were identified. And what was important there is that some of you, particularly who come from the more left in the NGO sector, we were always fighting structural reforms. No, that's structural adjustment, that's IMF and World Bank. But what a consensus was built that there are binding constraints. You can call them structural reforms or whatever, but let's get to the heart of the issue. Energy, freight, these are binding constraints that we need to collectively deal with. And there was a lot of information sharing and transparency, which enhanced decision making. And that's something as civil society, when you are even dealing at a local issue with a food scheme, often we know there's no food that is being delivered to our people, but we don't really know what is what problems the social development department at a local level might be experiencing, why there is no food coming out of the food scheme. So this was also happening at a national level. Everybody sat in their things and said there's a problem, rather than stepping into the other person's shoe to understand that problem. However, there were problems because government should govern and government want to govern. And now the business and labor was saying, hey, government, you can't govern. We must hold you accountable. And government would say, no, Parliament holds us accountable. So the roles and responsibilities were not clear. And in the end, this plan, while the social partners inputted into it, it's now mostly implemented by government. So there's also lessons there which I'll come back to. Now, the next one, where have I gone? I haven't been moving, sorry. Oh dear. Okay, that's the Presidential Job Summit. That's the Economic Recovery and Reconstruction Plan. And now you must tell me when I don't move. Now I'm talking about the Social Compact to support Eskom. So this was a very ambitious. This was in 2019, before COVID. And it was also linked to the Job Summit. Organized labor was saying, we're losing jobs because there's no electricity. And at that time, there was no even Andre de Ruyters. There was no CEO in Eskom. There were just lots of stories about Coco and Malifi, corruption and so on. So the idea was that if government committed to turn around Eskom, stop corruption, and make it easier for the private sector to generate energy, which now they're doing a lot of, and also initiate a just transition, business would invest in generation. It was difficult then for business to invest, but if government enabled, business would invest. And Labour said, we will give worker funds in the government pension fund to address the problem that Eskom had no money. And community said, we will address vandalism, and make sure that people pay for electricity. And what was good is that we developed an implementation plan, and we would meet regularly to see what the progress was. However, in the end, government has worked to turn around Eskom, but government said, this thing of labor, the money from the pension funds, it can't work. So the heart of the deal didn't happen. But yet, there was lots of understanding built. There was consensus on key issues. And as you can see now, the crisis has become a collective responsibility. We still blame government, but we also know we all have to do something, otherwise we're not going to get out of it. Okay, then on the COVID response team, here again, as I said earlier on, there was no documented social compact, but we worked together on big issues: lockdown restrictions, vaccination, workplace safety, and especially on relief to workers, businesses, the unemployed, and the vulnerable. And there were lessons again there, things that were not into clearer focus, like occupational health and safety came into focus. And a lot of trust was built. Before COVID, everybody said business and labor can't work together. At a national level. They don't say that so much anymore. Now they say business and, they say some people say business and government can work together. I see that Minister Ntshavheni says business and government can't work together. But that's part of our national dialogue. Okay, so those are some examples at a national level. I want to go. So now I want to talk about, and in a sense, these things created the environment where the president felt we've made a lot of progress. The Job Summit, the Economic Recovery Plan in COVID. Could we not have this grand social compact, this comprehensive social compact that can take us a step forward to create jobs, combat hunger? And there was a lot of excitement, a lot of expectations. And the president initiated, he didn't come to NEDLAC. he initiated a process of bilaterals with organized business, organized labor, the community people at NEDLAC, and I suppose also within government. But it didn't work, as I think the president envisaged. And why was that? Because, remember, it was 2022, and even in 2023 we're worse off. When there is a crisis in our country, even a poly-crisis, there isn't space to give. So, Labour cannot agree on wage restraint when they are supporting too many unemployed dependents. And business, organized business is a federation of federations. So now you have Business Unity South Africa, and you have the head of the clothing and retail thing, is part of BUSA. Then underneath the Clothing and Retail Federation, there are businesses. And it's not an easy structure to get a mandate. It's different with unions. Unions at least can get a mandate. When you come to community organizations like civil society, you tell me, you are NGOs with different mandates and so on. Is it possible that we can say to all of you, now you must all agree that you're all going to go out there and stop vandalism of railway lines? We're not organized like that, whether we like it or not, in South Africa. And then there are stakeholders, including many of you, who are not part of these constituencies. So that made it difficult. The other thing that made it difficult is that there was an expectation from the presidency about you would give something to gain from the greater good, but there was a lack of trust. So the presidency wanted business to invest and to create more jobs, and then they said they would fix up all the problems of energy and Transnet and so on. But business didn't believe it. So they said, we can only invest when we can see that there's electricity. We can't invest on the promise of electricity. That's not the way business works. And then, I think the other point, you have to be strong enough. Also, unions have to be strong enough to say, we're going to go for wage restraint, and their members will support them. Unions are only organized maybe 25 to 30% at the moment in our country. So you can't get that support. However, even though this social compact has not happened, I think there have been and there can still be gains. So business said, we can't support what you want, but we can give you resources on areas where we think we can assist, and I'll come back to that. For organized civil society or organized community, there was a process of the Social Sector Summit, and I see Jimmy is here, maybe he can talk about that later. I'm not sure it has gone where all of you would want it to go, but that's an ongoing process. And there have been bilateral engagements with Labour. So nobody is really happy with this, and I think there's a lot of lessons about this. So now, I just want to talk briefly about the business partnership. As I said, they were reluctant, but they kept on meeting with the president in the bilaterals. And eventually they said, let's identify only 3 areas: energy, transport and logistics, crime and corruption, which are constraints to growth and jobs. And we can bring resources and skills to bear, but we want joint structures and 6 weekly progress meetings with the president. And 150 companies have committed resources. So I was in a meeting with Cascovadia somewhere, and it was the week when we didn't have so much load shedding, and he said they have put engineers in Kusile. So the reason why Kusile is now up is because business has put engineers at Kusile. I'm not sure if it's altogether true or not, but it is true that there are private sector resources now helping government. So this thing again, it's about the balance of forces, and whether this is ultimately successful, I think, and whether it's half successful or half not successful, the verdict is still out. The risk, and people who've criticized it, is you can say business is opportunistic, or government is opportunistic because they want to win elections next year. Or it's another form of state capture, particularly by big business, by white monopoly capital. Or business is taking over the road of the state, privatization. There are all those risks. There are also, other people have welcomed it, that it's a practical response to the crisis. Remember I said we're in a polycrisis. We're not in normal situations. So maybe we need more working together than just giving it to government, because we're in a crisis. And it's a sign of hope that things will change. Just last week, I didn't put this in my slides, but there's a Venezuelan former minister of planning. He's now a big chief in Harvard. He did a study. And what does he say? He says the biggest problem that we're facing in our country, the reason for the polycrisis, is the capacity of the state. So we have to recognize, we can protest all we want about the weak capacity of the state. It's not going to make the state stronger now. It's just horrible, but it's true. We can still look to overthrow the state, and in elections you can also do that, which is your discussion tomorrow. But that's not my topic. Okay, so what are the lessons from this? Social compacting is not always appropriate, but it's appropriate where more will be achieved if you work together than separately. Okay? And from the experience of NEDLAC, I think it's better, not the grand one, where there is a limited set of issues in a sector and a space. Some of you might be involved in Komati, where they're trying to do a social compact around the closure, the just transition at Komati. And it's going to have to happen in many of the towns in Mpumalanga. Or where you're addressing a common crisis. Where there can be areas of agreement, but you acknowledge then there are contradictions. There's flexibility about partnership, and also where, and I think you can also relate to this, principals have an important role. Ministers and big chiefs have an important role. But you also need strong technical support and expertise. And you must recognize that the situation is dynamic and changing. So with the Eskom Compact, we realized we're not going to make the deal on the government pension fund, but we still cooperated on other things. Then, what I've talked about earlier on, I think we're better off being programmatic than trying to get trade-offs. And I think I explained that. I'm not going to go back to that now. And then there are preconditions. These are ideal. Doesn't always happen. The state should play a leadership role. And then, as I've already said, the parties should be diverse. Very important is to get a mandate. And we need to recognize where we can't get a mandate and carry constituencies. And that's where local compacting is often easier, because it's easier to get a mandate. Capable of making hard decisions, have capacity, capability, and political will. And then there often is, and I'm sure you experience it at a local level, there's got to be a leap of faith, where you don't think this is going to work, you don't think it's going to work. Like at the moment now, in NEDLAC, we're talking about, some of you might, that there should be a reduction in 10 basic staple foods. And Labour and even government is saying, maybe it can work. Business is saying, it can't work. And so we can't make progress. And we keep saying, let's try. Let's see if we can try to do something. The other thing is that we can't expect everybody to make the same contribution. You know, if you're, the state and business will always be able to contribute more, but you want everyone to make a contribution that is equitable. And the other issue is very important for me, is the playing field must be leveled. You know, if you're going into a meeting to talk about, again, let's use the issue about school feeding, and the people from government, they know about spreadsheets and what and what and what, and the school governing body doesn't know anything about bookkeeping, you're going to be bamboozled. That's just an easy example. And I think that's again where civil society comes in. Okay, so now I'm going to move to the considerations for yourselves. So firstly, because I was asked to explain what is happening in NEDLAC, the process of institutional reform, so that civil society could be more represented in NEDLAC, what are the implications for civil society, and what are some other considerations. Okay. So firstly, about NEDLAC. So, if those of you who don't know, NEDLAC is a Schedule 3A entity. It's like a state-owned entity, but our governing structures is made from organized business, organized labor, community and development interests, and government. But for a long time, there have been questions about, is NEDLAC fit for purpose? The key issues is representativity and how do people get admitted and terminated. Because our initial act, it said, you are there. COSATU, you're there. NACTU, you're there. FEDUSA, you're there. But the trouble is now there is SAFTU. So never mind about community and development interests. Because the community development interests were those which were then, when we did in 1994, women, civic, etc. There's also an issue about improved decision making and also how NEDLAC relates to Parliament. Earlier this morning I was in a meeting with the DG of Health, and he was saying, well, no, this bill on tobacco, we can bring it back to NEDLAC now, or it's in Parliament. I said, no. You can't. You know, when it's in Parliament, the legislature is, the parliamentarians must decide. It's too late. You need to bring laws before. So we want to tighten that up. So what we've done now is we are changing the Constitution. We've got a new bill, and we've also got a tighter protocol. The protocol is done. The Constitution is hopefully going to be approved tomorrow. What's tomorrow? No, Friday, and as well as a bill, but the bill still has to go to Parliament. The bill is where the big changes are that we want to make. Okay, so now, as many of you, some of you know, the NEDLAC Act talks about community and development interests, and they are appointed by the RDP minister, actually. So the idea now is that this formulation should be changed into organized civil society. And the definition of organized civil society is federations of non-governmental organizations. Okay? And it's the same. So for a union, for unions, you can't come there if you are NUMSA. You have to come there if you're a federation like SAFTU. NUMSA is part of SAFTU. For business, you can't come if you are OK Bazaars or Checkers. You have to come as the Consumer Goods Council of South Africa, and in fact, in business, it's a confederation. They come as Business Unity South Africa. Now, if you are organized civil society, and the Act is not saying you must be women or youth or children or whatever. You decide. So say, let's take the example which does exist, the South African Youth Council. The South African Youth Council, as I understand, is a federation of youth organizations like SOURS and so on. So that federation can apply if it is democratically constituted, which means it has a constitution. It must be registered either as an NGO, non-profit at DSD, or company at DTIC. Okay, that also shows that it's democratically constituted. Can't just be a forum, like these business forums. Okay? And you must be able to show that you're the most representative of non-governmental organizations representing civil society related to that issue. So, there could be a federation of women that come together, and then there's a federation of, and you have to show. Then there might be another one that comes, but they're not that representative. Because we're looking for the most representative federation for each area. But it can also mean that, let's say there's a women's federation, and in the women's, okay, let me have another example. Okay, let me take environment. So there can be, what's the environment coalition called? Environmental Social Justice Coalition, something like that. They can come, they show that they've got a constitution, they show that they've got affiliates and so on, and that they're representative. But meanwhile, there is also another federation looking only at air pollution, air social justice, say. And they can show that they've got other organizations there, and they're most representative about air pollution. Both can come into NEDLAC. Okay, so it's not that we are now having like local government, wall-to-wall approach. It's more flexible because civil society is also flexible and dynamic. Okay? Then, although at the end of the day, organized civil society must be appointed by the minister in the presidency, it's a recommendation from the NEDLAC governance structures. It's not a recommendation from the people that are already there. Okay? So there's a process in the Constitution, and then at the end of the day, the Executive Council recommends to the minister in the presidency. Also, membership can be terminated if you no longer meet eligibility criteria. The existing parties must comply with the new requirements or need to exit within 12 months unless the minister decides on a longer period. Then we've also introduced another provision, which was very important during COVID. During COVID, all the events, the trade unions and the employers and the health and safety authorities from the event sector, because they were not able to do any events, they built an event sector alliance. And they really had issues. How do you open up soccer safely? And so it's now possible that the Executive Council can say, for purposes of this discussion, we want this group to participate. Like for example, now again, we're looking at this 10 basic foods, staples. There's an NGO, I think they're called Grow Good. We can bring them in because they have got something to contribute. So I think what we can say is that there is more flexibility and more potential. But it comes with responsibility. Because I'm not sure, Kagiso, how well organized are civil society organizations. So it's a challenge to become organized in federal structures and get registered as a non-profit company or a NGO, okay? And also to get representative. So if you're only organized in Gauteng, now is the opportunity to make sure that you can also go to Mpumalanga and so on and so on. So it's an opportunity. And so even if this bill only becomes a law in a year's time or even 18 months because we're going to elections, it will take you time. Even social development takes time to approve your constitution and so on. And the other opportunity is that you can be able to come in even if there is an important issue where you want to participate. But as I said, this is also an opportunity for you to deepen sectoral and issue-based organizations. But the other point I want to make, and this is where I'm going to end, is that there are also opportunities for social compacting outside and around NEDLAC, which you can consider. So now, here I'm being provocative. This is not my mandate. This is just my thoughts from where I come from. So as I've said, we're facing a polycrisis. We need an ongoing and sustained response. This comprehensive compacting hasn't worked. We also have to recognize, you know, when was it? A couple of years ago, in one of the State of the Nations, the President says we're going to have a bullet train. It's going to go from Limpopo to Cape Town. You know, those are not going to happen anymore in our country. It's just sad. But what about radical incrementalism? So it's incremental, but let's call it radical because we like to be radicals. But where we focus on limited objectives and we expand over time. And those of you who work in organization and in communities, sometimes it doesn't matter whether you start with the problem at the school or the problem at the clinic. But once you start to bring people together, you build confidence, institutional memory, organizational skills. So let's look at areas where you can reach agreement. You know, in some local governments, like even now in the city of Joburg, is in a crisis. But yet, outer the water can, they've managed to build an understanding with Rand Water, Joburg Water, and the National Department. Even though, you know, in Joburg, do we say, no, you mustn't do that, you're colluding with the corrupt coalition in Joburg? Or do you say, let's see how much we can achieve working with them? Where there's implementation capacity, and importantly, because one thing I'm sure many of you will agree with me, we've lost a lot of learning and growth amongst activists. You know, us old activists, I think we've unlearned certain things because we have got two big stomachs and so on. You know, also amongst young people, there are some young people who are very innovative and come up with really new styles of organizing which are to be welcomed. But there's a lot of other young people who are not organized and who play very destructive roles because of their disillusionment in our society. So, you know, when we were young, you know, everybody was a COSAS member, whether you were a thug or you were not a thug, you were a COSAS member, and you could be built, you could put in some extent in the discipline of COSAS. I don't think, you know, that's harder now. And I suppose my question is, could these islands of effectiveness grow over time into virtual circles of inclusive growth and ongoing institutional improvement? So starting, that's for you to think about. And so I was a bit scared to talk about South Africa, because maybe if I talk about this or that, you'll tell me no, but actually there's this problem, that problem, because you're the guys that know, you know? But I did find this article from a book called Gradual about New York. And some of you might have visited New York, but everybody used to think, you think New York, you think like Hillbrow now. It's dangerous. And yet they started a small process, both in government, then business club together to clean up neighborhoods, NGOs offered after-school clubs for at-risk teenagers, and incrementalism was slow. But also, this issue, you know, when you want to do something very big and there's a lot of money, I'm afraid to say in our country, a lot of opportunists and bees come to the honey. And before you know, everybody is fighting about the money that is coming into this project. But when there is less money, and everybody must bring their own resources, you can get more cooperation. It's sad. It shouldn't be. But let's confront the reality. And so, this is my last slide. What potential does this hold for civil society? Difference and diversity can be promoted. You don't have to start to be organized nationally to be effective. Local and sectoral organizations, it's easier to get mandates. And those of you who belong to national foundations like Kagiso Trust, there's a way to support what is happening locally. Protocols and performative behavior can be disrupted. Sharing information and experience builds understandings and breaks down preconceived approaches and views. And then there's this other concept, I don't know what you think about it, you can debate it, called co-governance. You know? It can sound bad. It can sound like collusion. But it's also an opportunity to be at the decision-making table, but on the other side, instead of only lobbying and protesting. And ultimately, a measured sequence of doable plans can produce this grand plan that we want over time. There you go. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lisa. I think we need to engage a little bit to make sure that we understand some of the emerging issues, because we are going to have enough time in the commissions to discuss and appreciate what it means for us. Just very briefly, there are key issues that we may want to think in engaging clarity now, but refining them as we go to the commissions as well. The first one is that a social compact shouldn't be seen as one monolithic thing, or the grand compacts. They can be redesigned in many different ways, depending on the issues, and they can cascade from national, provincial, district, and local as a building block. And especially this is important as I was listening, given the experience that we have learned in South Africa since social compacting emerged, tried and practiced. The second important issue that we have to note is that there are certain preconditions for social compacting to work. And there are key issues under preconditions that we need to take into account, which I'm not going to go to them because the document will be shared. One of the most important things is the trust, that social compacts do not function in the context of the distrust that especially exists today. But also trust and social compacting should not be assumed to be a sweetheart relationship. It must be an ongoing contested space as a process of attrition and convergence. Relating to that is the issue of responsibility. When you go to social compacting, you must also take responsibility and believe despite the limitations. And then she concluded by outlining what are the key considerations for civil society, having learned from the experiences and the variations. What should civil society consider? And that's why we are here. To enter the space in a more significant and meaningful way. She also outlined what has been the changes in NEDLAC that has a bearing on on social compacting processes. Either the changing or amendment of the NEDLAC constitution, but most importantly, the current bill underway and what are its provisions, because these were undertaken in recognition of the challenges and the limitations within the social compacting process in NEDLAC. The issue of the representation and eligibility is also being outlined. Here, representation is who and how you are constituted in order to play a legitimate role in the social compacting process, formally within the NEDLAC architecture. And she outlined those. I'm not going to go through them. But she concluded by saying there could be other considerations of social compacting outside the formal processes of NEDLAC. And that could be authored, especially in the organization and community building processes, responding to the nature of the crisis and issues emerging. And you build the different forms and types of partnerships at that level, that in time they may graduate in being taken to certain levels. Those were the key emerging issues. And because we are going to discuss them more systematically, even during the commissions, I would like to open for 10 minutes to just explore where there is a clarity needed or fundamental issues that needs to be noted. And we'll share that 10 minutes between us here and the satellite locations. One, let's shoot. Can somebody with a mic roving very quickly? There are so many hands. Can somebody also note the online satellite? We are going to give only one person from, we believe in democracy. From that table, we will get one person decide. When I come back, you would have democratically agreed.
Where do I start?
Sorry? Yeah, we'll start there, but we are going to have 5 hands here.
Okay.
Because we will discuss. This comrade is intimidating me because he's sitting in front of me. The question, there was that table, they will agree 1, 2, and the last one here, unfortunately. But yeah, be very specific so that we give other colleagues online. Very specific. If it's a comment, a very brief comment. If it's a question, a very synthetic question. Go ahead, comrade.
Greetings. My name is Andy Lemapisa. I come from Eastern Cape, East London. I represent PCM, Buffalo City Municipality. Straight to the point, quickly. You talk of loss of growth to the young. Loss of growth of learning to activists. So how do we get activists? To learn, to get that culture of learning. And as well, the second question, you talk of young people that are not organized. How do you get young people organized? Thank you.
Thank you. The second hand, where was the second here? No? Here, and there was one there. Okay, here.
Thank you. Philemon is my name. I'm from Limpopo. The question that I have is, Director, can you tell us if NEDLAC is still serving its purpose?
Okay, thank you. There was a hand just behind you.
The hand behind me?
Yeah, just on that table. They have agreed. Oh, it was there. It was that table. Oh, okay, that table. Sorry.
Thank you, Chair. We are concerned because we understand that NEDLAC is holding people who are said to be representing certain groups, like NGOs, like women, but they came from organizations that do not exist anymore. So how are we going to deal with the inclusion of representative civil society to NEDLAC? Basically, we'd like to know about the steps that NEDLAC intends to take to ensure that we bring on current, existing, active civil society federations, as they say. Thank you.
Thank you. That was the third here.
Melama Africa. What I wanted to ask Lisa, it's because I wanted to ask. She mentioned. She mentioned. She mentioned that.
Speak to the mic, ma'am.
Yeah. She mentioned no wages, no strike, cost of, I just wanted her to explain to us if the cost of living is this high, the way that it is today, and people are, the strikes and strike wages are not supposed to be happening now, and how do we live our lives? That's a question number one. Question number two is local economy in communities, like for instance the village economy, the township economy, where all the economy is now taken by please get me right, I'm not being xenophobic, ne? Whilst local economy are being taken away from South Africans by foreign people that actually came to our country under false pretenses of refugees. So we still have a long way to go, and we still have to correct the incorrect things that our government has allowed in the spaces. Like for an example, last week I was listening to the minister when he was talking about the foreign policies and stuff and refugees, and he mentioned that the government made a mistake and we need to have a restart button. So to me, I feel like a restart button should start from 1994. They should press that restart button from there, and people should come to our country the way that they should come to our country, because South Africans are being labeled as lazy people whilst everything has been taken away from them. Lastly,
Yes, two questions, comrade, two questions. The last one there.
No,
Can somebody prepare the online questions?
no, thanks, Chairperson. Greetings, colleagues. My name is Elias Mukwana, the Deputy Secretary from Mpumalanga. Chair, is two things here, but one question. And I'm glad Lisa touched on the issue of SAFTU, which I used to follow with greatest interest, its admission into NEDLAC. Now, that's the first issue. But connected to the question now, one of the requirements that she indicated for the civil society to be admitted into NEDLAC, they should be appointed by the minister in the presidency. Now, here's the problem. The civil society's main role is to hold politicians accountable. Hence, I'm saying I used to follow the issue of admittance of SAFTU into NEDLAC. There were a lot of hurdles there. Now, when the civil society needs to be in NEDLAC and it needs to be appointed by the very same person that needs to be held accountable, of which we know they do not want to be held accountable. are we not making or pre-manufacturing a hurdle for the civil society into NEDLAC? That is my question. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'll ask Anzio to take the questions from the online setting. Anzio.
The main question that came from the online platform is, can we get a glimpse of the copy of the NEDLAC bill? This is from Anne Brown, who's joining us online. I'm not sure, Comrade, how we proceed with the responses, as I know we are moving to commissions next.
Oh, that was just one question.
Just the one.
I'm going to ask, I know we are rushing this one, but we'll revisit the questions during the commissions. Lisa, you want to give some of them were comments? There were some pertinent questions that can be summarized. Thank you.
Thank you very much for those questions. Maybe I'll answer the online first because it's the easiest. Once the NEDLAC bill has been approved by governance structures, it will be available on our website. I think the question from Andile from Buffalo City is really a question that you need to engage upon about how do we organize youth the same or differently from before. The existential question raised by Philemon here from Limpopo, whether NEDLAC is still serving its purpose. You know, in my mind, all organizations go up and down in relationship to the context, you know? And the ability to serve your purpose relates to your ability to be agile and flexible. So I would say that there have been times, if we're not agile and flexible, that you don't serve your purpose. But for those of you that saw what NEDLAC was doing, for example, in COVID, I think it was serving a purpose. To the extent that we can now help our country respond to this polycrisis, we can serve a purpose. The other issue about NEDLAC, it's not like an NGO like Section 27, you know, which is going, it's a federation on its own. It's a council, so it's only as strong as the weakest link. So if organized labor or business or community or government are weak, you can't do more than you can. So, you know, I don't think it's something that we must close it down because it's out-of-date organization. I think it needs to reinvent itself at every time in relationship to, can I say, the balance of forces. Okay, maybe I'm avoiding the question. The lady at the back, she didn't give her name, about organizations that don't exist anymore. There's Jimmy there, he can answer that if you want. But what I did try and say in the slides, and I hope the slides will be distributed, was the process to make sure that now we have more representative organizations, and no organization that doesn't exist can no longer be in NEDLAC. The new bill provides for termination, you know, of organizations that no longer exist. Mama here, I don't think I should be saying that there should no longer be strikes. I think the right to strike is enshrined in our Constitution, and there is always a role for strikes. What I was saying is that how do we combine striking with other ways of collaborating depending on the issue? And there's some issues where it might be more meaningful to collaborate than to use power. But power is always, having power is always important, and being able to exercise it in a disciplined way. Then I think you must debate amongst yourselves this issue about the role of immigrants. The minister has introduced a new approach, and it's going to be a very important debate that I hope that you're all going to be part of. I would be very unhappy in today's context of using the word restart button, because I've got a funny feeling that Benjamin Netanyahu, he wants to press that restart button in Gaza. And it's not going to happen. And it's not going to happen in our country. There's no way we can press a restart button and we're not going to have a million Zimbabweans living in our country. It's not going to happen. And we need to think about it in the context of the work that we do. Elias from Mpumalanga. You ask an important question. And let me answer it in two ways. The one is that when you will read the NEDLAC bill and our constitution, the key decision makers about admission is NEDLAC. And it's not, if it's SAFTU, it's not organized labor. It's organized labor, business, government, and community. So there is a process, but ultimately the issue of the minister and the president approving is a final step. And the reason why we've done it is, I think, also to safeguard, because it can also be that you can have, if you don't have that safeguard, you can also get, what can I say, imposters. So there's a risk both ways, but there is a process. The other point that I want to make is that some of you might be in boards with government. It doesn't mean to say because you've been appointed by cabinet to be on a board that then you're towing the government line. And that's an important governance principle that we should be ensuring in these structures, in all our structures, and something which our constitution protects. Thank you.
Thank you. We will try to circulate the presentation today. Thank you very much, Lisa. I think the groundwork and the key issues have been outlined. And I know, what is the time now? 11 o'clock. Here is a proposal. I'm going to ask Anzio to give us the layout of the commissions where they will be. And then we break for tea. And we can appreciate if people and colleagues can make it a working tea. Grab the tea and go to the commissions. And the commissions will be 90 minutes. Ne? There are 4 commissions. And I think we will be able to recover immediately after him. We'll grab our tea. And then we'll go to those allocated commission sessions. Thank you.
If I correct my pronouns, I'll probably be accused of derailing the space. I use they, them pronouns, just saying. Comrades, the idea was that we would break for tea after the briefing on the breakaway sessions. The breakaway sessions will be as follows. There will be 4 breakaway sessions. The first breakaway session will be in Palm Room. It will be led by Kanya from Rivonia Circle. Kanya, if you could please identify yourself. So we will move to the tea break. Breakaway session 1 will be led by Kanya. Breakaway session 2 in Elm Room will be led by Comrade Shula. Comrade Shula, if you could identify yourself. I don't see Comrade Shula. Oh, there we go, sorry. Comrade Ash, Comrade Pumlani will be in Ash. Comrade Pumlani, if you could, thank you. And then Comrade Susan will lead the discussion here in this plenary space. So that we are very clear on what's happening, the commissions will be discussing the following topics. The conversation will be facilitated such that we consider how do we strengthen civil society's role in the democratic consolidation of social justice? What are the urgent intervention areas for a social compact? What are priority actions? And what role does NEDLAC and the Presidential Social Sector Summit have to play in putting in place a new compact over the crisis? There were a lot of questions that were left unanswered here in the room. There are a lot of questions that I'm sure will be arising in the commissions. And so I'd just like you to listen for a second in terms of how we plan to report back. The online platform will be individual interaction. Anyone who is on the online platform may send comments on the online platform, that is on Facebook. We will see those comments live time and incorporate them into the report. Then each of the provincial convenings will answer the same questions. Each of the provincial convenings, like the commissions, will be asked to put together a PowerPoint presentation with bullet point highlights of the discussion. Please can we ask that the facilitators appoint someone to put together that PowerPoint presentation. They will then be centralized here in the room during the break, by that time the lunch break. And when we come back, we will report back after bringing all of those points into one document and synthesizing them. Comrade Tessa, I can see your hand. A question. Please, quick. We've got a mic behind you.
Is it on? So I just wanted us to have clarity, because what we spoke about this morning in terms of what Joko was saying today is about consolidating what the issues are. But our presentation was about NEDLAC. And I'm just wondering if that doesn't then focus our conversation on NEDLAC and what are the issues for. So I think that just there's conceptual clarity about, is the commission about the issues or about how we engage NEDLAC? Because I think that those are two different things.
So for clarity on that point, while we recognize that NEDLAC is an important body within our landscape, the focus of the conversation is not on NEDLAC. But just so that we've got in the back of our minds that NEDLAC is a critical player in this landscape. So when we talk about the broader issues, what will be discussed in the breakaway sessions will include a framing of the new social compact, and that will be done in respect of local governance, economy, anti-corruption, education, health, social development, community and national cohesion, youth, safety and security, gender and GBVF, land agriculture, energy and climate change, leadership and governance. Comrades, I must emphasize that while there is a laundry list here of topics, the expectation is not for you to uncover or unpack each topic individually, but to cluster the topics as is appropriate for your conversation. All of these topics are available. If you are trying to get hold of the program, you can scan the QR codes that are on the walls, or you can find one of the team members who will make the program available to you. Each of the conveners in these spaces or the facilitators will also have a copy of the program and all of the content. When we are done here, we will have the tea break, which will then lead into these sessions. Comrade Seth, good afternoon, good morning.
One question.
We've got a microphone. We are online, so we need our comrades to hear us. I must also apologize. I was being told this morning that comrade is not the universal term. It's a default setting. I apologize, colleagues.
Just a quick question. Does each commission have to answer all the 4 questions, or does each commission answer a specific question in the 4 that you've outlined?
Each commission will respond to all 4 questions, and each commission will discuss all of the topics as they see fit for that conversation. This will be done on both the provincial convenings as well as in the breakaway sessions here in the physical location at Birchwood. So we will go from here into the tea break. I see one more behind you, colleague.
No, so it was just a clarity seeking in terms of the venues. I was only able to grab the Palm and this one here, and the other 2, maybe. Thank you.
So the 4 venues, to repeat, are as follows. There's palm, as in palm tree, elm, I assume as in elm tree, ash, I assume as in an ash tree, and then this is the plenary venue, which is the 4th location. I do want to encourage that everybody that's sitting here that is part of a provincial structure, please do check on the provincial convenings. Our colleagues in the provincial convenings are organized amongst themselves. They will also be participating in this conversation. But ideally, I'm noticing hands pop up. I'm very reluctant to take them. I apologize. I'm a stickler for time. Our other program director, not so much, but let's try and keep the line, comrades, colleagues. The intention here is that we'll break for tea now. You move from the tea break directly into the 4 commission rooms here in the physical location. Is it an exigent point? Can we please get, there are 2 points. I will close with these and we will move.
No, we just need clarity about in Palm, which questions are being discussed. In Ash, which
We
questions.
can't hear you.
We need clarity about which question in Palm. Which question in Ash.
Comrades, I have just said that all of the questions will be answered in all of the spaces.
The same.
All of the questions. And then again, just for clarity, each room has been allocated a facilitator. The facilitator will repeat the instruction in the room.
Thank you so much. Us coming from the Western Cape, we're a group, so you didn't clarify if we're just going to group in one room, or are we going to split each province into each room so that then there's diversity instead of us going in one? Yeah.
In an ideal world, you will self-select the rooms. There is a cap here in the physical location of 50 people per room. We would ask, in the interest of having fruitful conversations, that you split yourself so that you are not with your normal cohort. Please do not go to your provincial cohort. Try and mix amongst yourselves. You'll answer all 4 questions, discuss all of the discussion topics, and we will move from that point forward. Please, can we take a break for tea and move on to the plenary breakaway sessions?